Zelensky in the US, a visit that could change the course of the war. Trump has announced the timing of a meeting with Putin.
I would say within 2 weeks. Pretty soon.
A new model of military aid to Ukraine.
Trump is preparing a new geopolitical move. He plans to create a Ukraine Victory Fund, which will be financed by new tariffs against China.
Hundreds of millions for drones and more, the results of Ramstein.
The Pearl Fund has already allocated $2 billion for the purchase of American weapons.
There never was and never will be. Pure gasoline is disappearing in Russia. Don't fill up at Tatneft, the one by the exit. My car stalled. Orban is preparing a meeting between Trump and Putin. Hungary is an island of peace. The bunker dweller tried to show off his intelligence, but
unfortunately, it just didn't quite work out as we had hoped.
the advice of the great economist, Lukashenko is moving to a new
level. This is a crucial aspect to consider for optimal performance.
I'm bringing Stanislav Zhelekovsky into our broadcast, a candidate of political sciences and international affairs expert. Friends, we'll be discussing the most important issues with you, especially considering that right at this moment, the Ukrainian president is in the United States. And let's discuss with you, Stanislav, what they will be talking about with Donald Trump. Look, here's the situation. Zelensky has already held important meetings with representatives of defense and energy companies. He promised that there is good news for Ukraine. Well, that's clear. We don't really need any bad news. If there were any, I think it's not even worth talking about them right now. The president of Ukraine, yes. I hope that the meeting with Donald Trump will lead to concrete decisions. Please tell us regarding this visit, what is important for the Ukrainian delegation to achieve? What agenda is it important to have? What are the risky points that you are paying attention to? Please, the floor is yours.
For Ukraine, above all, it is important to maintain good strategic relations with the United States of America. That's clear, because it is precisely the United States that can help ensure Ukraine has everything it needs to counter Russian aggression, and also so that Ukraine can, in a hypothetical post-war period, so that have the crucial opportunity to fully maintain its robust defense capability and national security. Moreover, it is essential to significantly strengthen these vital aspects as well. In addition, continuous efforts are needed to ensure long-term stability and growth. And I truly think that during the significant visit of the Ukrainian delegation, these important issues were indeed thoroughly raised, and a whole series of productive meetings certainly took place, which I personally attended back when a significant and high-level delegation that notably included the esteemed Ukrainian Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko embarked on an official visit to the United States of America. There were also numerous important meetings and extensive crucial negotiations that took place during their stay. And this also applies to the visit of the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, who likewise, let's say, emphasizes the need to strengthen Ukraine's essential defense capabilities and also effectively protect our vital critical infrastructure, including in particular our crucial energy sector, which is of paramount importance. This is important because we do not know how long the hostilities will last. And the United States of America is precisely the country that can provide us with everything we need. And I think that we can even work in many areas that were not previously developed. And there is a very large field here for work. If we are talking about the meeting between President Zelensky and his American counterpart, Donald Trump, it is obvious that everything I have listed will be discussed by both sides, because it is important that, so to speak, at the highest level, further necessary actions are carefully coordinated, and naturally the crucial issues of a peaceful settlement will be thoroughly raised, as well as various important aspects of these complex issues, because right now we clearly see compelling signs that we are steadily moving towards a significant new stage. In order for the entire negotiation process to be as genuinely productive and truly effective as humanly possible, it is absolutely essential that we consistently keep our valued partners, specifically our American partners, firmly in our focus and diligently provide them with all the absolutely necessary and comprehensive information about precisely how to best proceed with these important discussions. Specifically in the context of developing of software, some kind of shared vision of what this truly peaceful and lasting settlement might ultimately look like. But also, I think the Ukrainian side can clearly and comprehensively outline the specific conditions under which this peaceful settlement could be effectively and successfully implemented. Of course, it's still too early to predict such long-term prospects because it seems to me that the peace process will take some time because we might end up going in circles again, and it's unclear whether there will be any positive results. But as for our ongoing cooperation with the United States of America, there really is a great deal that can genuinely offer significant opportunities both for Ukraine and for the United States. Moreover, we already have a comprehensive agreement that has been formally signed. This significant agreement pertains to the vital mineral resources, and it could now effectively serve as a crucial kind of guiding framework for both Kyiv and Washington. Furthermore, we can already clearly observe the gradual and consistent implementation of the provisions that were meticulously signed and agreed upon. And of course, we would like to know to what extent the United States of America is ready to help Ukraine obtain reliable guarantees of security. This issue should not be forgotten either, because after all, a peaceful settlement may occur. We should not rule this out, and we need an active role from the United States of America precisely to protect Ukraine in the post-war period. This is very important because we do not know, for example, whether Ukraine will be able to integrate into NATO or not, whether Ukraine can fully rely on all our partners, particularly in Europe, because there are also many disagreements there, and that is a separate case that needs to be worked on. And overall, we still do not know what challenges will arise, because we must understand that in reality, there are far more challenges than just the Russian Federation itself, and we must all clearly, that is why we need the leading role of the United States of America in this and other matters. Therefore, I think that both sides can discuss all of this together. In particular, if we are talking specifically about President Zelensky's visit of the United States of America and his meeting with the head of the White House. So, in other words, we will diligently keep a very close eye on all the available information, at least on what precisely becomes publicly available and accessible to everyone. And I genuinely think that after all this anticipation, President Zelensky's important visit will ultimately prove to be quite positive and beneficial for us. Well, if, for example, we talk about such an issue as tomahawks for Ukraine, that of course is a controversial matter. I don't predict a positive decision from the American president yet, and he kind of made that clear. Well, I think that this is precisely connected with the negotiation process and with not closing the door on the opportunities that the American leader is holding out. But still, discussed, this aspect will certainly have a future perspective, because we have to understand that, again, there are no guarantees that we will see any positive results. And Putin has done everything to show and continues to show his unwillingness to sit down at the negotiating table. Perhaps the fact that Putin has now agreed to meet with Trump in Hungary, though even that is still uncertain, but most likely it could happen, can be seen as a signal that Russia is at least ready to exchange views on a peaceful settlement. Nevertheless, I'm still not rushing to say that it is definite there will be any result, considering that the Kremlin has already tried many, many times to deceive everyone, tried to buy itself valuable time by pretending and attempting to mislead the international community with false pretenses and deceptive actions to engage in negotiations. So we might be seeing, let's say, a new stage of such imitation from Moscow, but nevertheless, we can't completely rule out some kind of result. we cannot be certain of a positive outcome. So we need to cooperate with the United States of America at all possible levels, particularly when it comes to long-range weaponry. And again, if there are no results, I don't rule out that we might even receive Tomahawks in the future if Putin ultimately refuses, so to speak, to come to the negotiating table.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Look, here's the situation. I'd like to ask you, how does Donald Trump's post yesterday about a possible meeting with Putin correlate with what Andriy Yermak said? He says that the most important thing is to change Putin's attitude. And it's necessary to find exactly those solutions that will change the Russian president's attitude. He needs to understand that it's impossible to play games with President Trump. And after that, we read Peskov's statement where he says that, yes, Putin is planning to meet with Trump, but it's very important that thorough preparation takes place before these negotiations. He plans to meet with the American president in a few weeks or a little later. So, you see, on the one hand, you can't play games with Trump, and at the same time, again, there's preparation. Again, it takes several weeks for this to happen. And what happens in the meantime? In the meantime, the war will go on, the shelling will continue. Isn't this a game on Putin's part? Then it seems like this isn't even a two-move strategy.
I perceive such maneuvers by the Russian dictator, let's put it that way, seem like an attempt to delay everything that could potentially happen in the very near future, namely the crucial provision of long-range missiles to Ukraine, including, for example, the highly effective Tomahawks. And also, let's say, Putin clearly wants to delay possible new sanctions pressure. After all, we absolutely shouldn't forget that many prominent politicians in Donald Trump's immediate circle, and indeed not only in his direct circle, are genuinely ready to take such a significant step so that, let's just say, it would become entirely possible to strengthen sanctions against Russia and against its economic and trade partners. But for now, the American president is making it clear that this issue will be postponed. But this, in fact, is exactly what the Russian dictator wants to see by essentially simulating these negotiations. Therefore, let's just say, we can safely assume that a completely new kind of, perhaps a novel and innovative approach, the potential outcome of these crucial negotiations, that is to say, could, so to speak, potentially provide a significant window of opportunity for Vladimir Putin, specifically and particularly in the critical context of continuing his ongoing aggression and actively attempting to decisively break through the established front lines in such a strategic way as to substantially strengthen his overall negotiating position in the more distant, far-off future. Whether this will work again or not, whether Putin will be able to step into the same river yet again, it's hard for me to say. But I would like to clearly see here that Donald Trump has indeed changed his overall perspective, and I would very much like the American president to fully understand that Vladimir Putin is truly trying to continue to lead him by the nose. I want to remind you that earlier, Trump was not so harsh toward Russia and its leadership. Well, for example, if we're talking about the spring-summer period, and now we see that the criticism from the American administration is increasing more and more towards Russia, towards Moscow, towards the Kremlin. And regarding Ukraine, on the contrary, we see that now there is more constructiveness, more willingness to cooperate, and so on. So this is a positive aspect for us in the sense that Washington is changing its perspective and changing it for the better. In other words, it's changing. The perspective is changing for the better. And it seems to me that if Donald Trump were to change his approach towards Russia, then we might see the Russian dictator Putin at the negotiating table as well. But if we now see this meeting again, and afterwards there are once again statements from Moscow saying that they're not ready yet, that Ukraine is not ready, and it's not so much what they say, but how they say that Ukraine is not ready, that the government there is not the right one, that some crucial conditions are still actively being worked out, and so on and so forth. But then, once again, this would undeniably mean that the Kremlin has successfully managed, yet again, so to speak, to completely outsmart the current American president and thus the entire powerful United States of America. And then, without a doubt, Putin will continue diligently working on coming up with new, innovative strategies and approaches, ways to significantly delay what the United States of America could actually and effectively do, specifically when it comes to imposing sanctions and providing crucial support for Ukraine. That's precisely why this is a significant and pressing problem. And I don't know if we'll be able to see it resolved. I would still very much like to see the United States of America take a significantly tougher stance toward the Russian Federation. And that position would be surely the most appropriate in this situation, because we see that Russia only understands strength and pressure. Unfortunately, right now, we don't know what other negotiations are taking place behind closed doors. So we are not just talking exclusively about the United States and Russia here. And I would also very much like to know what significant role the People's Republic of China might potentially play in this entire complex geopolitical puzzle. As we all know, there is currently a significant new cooling of relations now. Well, to be perfectly honest, they were already pretty cold to begin with, but there were genuine hopes and expectations that President Trump and President Xi could eventually meet face to face and, so to speak, genuinely try to smooth out the many rough edges and significant points of contention that have been developing between their respective nations, which have caused considerable friction and concern globally, have existed and still exist now, that are currently present at this moment in time. But as we can clearly see, once again, the United States and former President Trump essentially have not really been able to effectively, let's say, some nations have taken a significantly different stance, and now we genuinely don't know to what extent the People's Republic of China can truly play a constructive and meaningful role, especially considering that it really could exert considerable influence over the Russian dictator and his decisions. And perhaps Trump hopes to break up this alliance, the Putin-Xi alliance, and in this way he replaced one meeting with another. That is, the one that was supposed to take place in South Korea, as far as I know, may not happen anymore, but we'll see. Again, as for the meeting with Putin, we didn't know anything about it. And this information literally appeared just yesterday, and in a country like Hungary, no less. So let's say perhaps there's some additional game being played here as well, possibly against China. Maybe China will join in later. And still, there is hope that Beijing will somehow have a positive influence on this situation. There could be different scenarios here, but it would be good to know on what terms Putin is ready to stop the hostilities. We all know very well what conditions he has set before. And that this position, which has been held all this time, has never changed, starting from 2022, or maybe even from the period before the full-scale aggression. So we'll see. And it will be interesting to see what Trump and Putin are actually willing to discuss and what the Russian dictator might bring with him this time. As we know, in Anchorage, Putin arrived with the same demands. Well, let's just say the overall situation is quite complicated and rather delicate, but we sincerely hope that today's important meeting between President Zelensky and former President Trump will be positive and productive. And for us, the most important thing is that the crucial relationship between our respective countries remains consistently at a high and mutually beneficial level, and that it always, is truly constructive and genuinely effective for both sovereign states, because that is clearly in the best interests of both Kyiv and Washington.
Thank you very much, Stanislav. I'll just mention what seems to me to be some obviously positive facts. No matter what we talk about, when you see that in Russia's Stolitomak, a city where the avant-garde plant is located, there are once again fires and explosions, and this plant produces ammunition, then hope remains. Thank you very much. Stanislav Zhelikovsky, international affairs expert, was on air with Ukraine Today. Take care of yourself. Goodbye.
All the best.